Um, it just welcome to Replenish, hope that sustains in the midst of adversity. This is a safe place where I'll invite special guests to share encouragement and insight to replenish us in the journey of raising kids from hard places. So whether you're an adoptive parent, foster parent, kinship, safe family, this conversation is for you. And today I've invited Renae Dupius to join us about caring for the caregiver. And Renae, what, Max? Sorry, my husband was making hand signals. He's my tech guy. Anyways, before we get started with Renae, I wanted to introduce to you who she is. Renae is a trauma specialist and the director of the respite program at OC United. Her and her husband, Casey, were intensive treatment foster parents in Los Angeles County, which led to adopting 2 children with complex developmental trauma. This journey inspired her to learn to become a trainer of pretty much every intervention out there that she could get her hands on. I'll let her tell you a little bit more about all of those. A lot of letters after her name. And to create safe spaces for families dealing with behavioral issues. Along a whole host of certifications, she also has a Master's of Divinity from Fuller Theological Seminary. So Renae, welcome to the conversation.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, welcome. So, what is there anything, first of all, you'd like to add to that bio? And then also, maybe you could tell us what started you on this journey to the world of foster and adoption.
Sure. I'm sure that if any pertinent information about my bio will come up in the conversation, so I don't need to go and revisit it. But yeah, when I started out, even in my getting a Master in Divinity, I really thought I was going to be a worship pastor at a church somewhere. That was sort of what I thought God had put me on this path, because that's what I was doing at the time I was starting seminary. And it was about 3 years into my studies that this whole world of foster and adoption broke open for us, and it completely wrecked my trajectory. And I'm grateful for how it wrecked my trajectory, but it has absolutely completely changed everything that my husband and I were doing and what we were about, even as a family. And so it wasn't a plan. It's not something we ever wanted to do. I was very angry at people when they told me that we should consider fostering or adopting. Wow. I told them to mind their own business.
Oh my.
So you can imagine if I was going to look into the future at current now Renae, I would have been shocked.
For sure. For sure.
So it was, how we got on this whole thing was that there were a lot of conversations with people. My husband and I did struggle with infertility for 12 years. And we had come to kind of the end of what we were even going to consider being our journey into becoming parents. We just had decided this meant we weren't going to be. And we did something really silly. We went to a church service where this pastor from Kenya was preaching, and as he was speaking, he really talked a lot about how he kept getting in the way of what God was doing. And once he got out of the way and really accepted that God had this plan for him, all of these amazing things were happening. And it was this pastor who wasn't charismatic. He didn't have a large following, but he was very earnest in talking about what God is doing and it being better than the plans that we could ever make. And so at the end of it, he said, if anybody wants to, if they believe that God is calling them to something different than where they thought he's been calling them to, stand up. And my husband and I both stood up. Like, our eyes were closed. We didn't know someone was doing it.
Wow.
And we stood up, and then we're like, uh-oh, I wonder what this means. And literally the first thought out of my head is, please don't send me to Africa. Literally the whole, I said, whatever. I said, please don't send me to Africa. It's going to happen, isn't it? And it didn't. what happened instead was there was an adoption ministry meeting later that month at the same church, and they had domestic adoption, international adoption. They were just beginning the conversations about safe families at that point. And so we didn't put those two things together, that us going to that was actually going to be us opening ourselves up to the bigger and better that God had for us.
Right.
Right. I was actually going to the seminar so that I could collect enough information to prove to everyone that we were not going to be a foster parent.
The right people.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, surely, like I'm a cancer survivor. There's no way they're going to give me a kid. We have no money. We can't afford it. Like all of these things. Let me just get the paperwork to give to people to tell them to stop saying this. And then there was Olive Crest had a section and a breakout, and we went to it, and we were like, wait a minute, wait, what? What's foster to adopt? And that was the beginning of our journey. And I remember crying through that first 45 minutes of their whole talk. The poor lady was like, are you okay? But at the end of it, I'm not overstating this or kidding, that at that moment, it was when we realized, oh, we can have a family. And it was just this amazing moment where we're like, we actually could do this. So that's how we got into it. And we went in not knowing anything about parenting, not knowing nearly enough about trauma. And it was that journey of the two kids came in at ages 6 and 7. And they have complex developmental trauma that was not recorded because they had never been in a placement long enough for them to have anything really recorded.
Right.
So that was our reality. And so it was trial by fire, upwards, pushing a boulder, and any other type of metaphor that you like to give to it. But I'm so grateful that it's not wasted, because I've been able to translate all of the really hard things and all of the healing things into being able to walk alongside other people in their journey.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you have been through a lot, and you don't hesitate to be innovative in trying to share all of your knowledge and hope and inspiration with other people. Every time I talk to you, you've added something new, and it's always like, to me, like on the cutting edge of, where things are at. You're like out in the forefront. So
thank you.
I just love all that you do. You just have an abundance of energy and vision. So thank you for all that you do for our families.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about care for the caregivers. And so that means taking care of ourselves. So what can you share with us today about that? Like, where should we start?
Yeah, I think that for me, part of the instrumental way that we can sustain in all of this is making sure that we really are addressing our grief. I think that has been, for at least for me, that when I haven't been able to go in that journey, and there's lots of different ways that different things in my life I need to grieve. I am a kid from a hard place myself, and even though I didn't go into the foster care system, something that has become clear to me in the last 6 months is I should have.
Wow.
I should have gone into the foster care system. My story is very similar to a lot of the stories of the kids that we're serving. But it was a different time and a different place. Yeah. And so
I love that you say that you've just kind of figured that out in the last 6 months. Yeah. I mean, that's how this journey is, just more and more gets revealed. And I just love that you're transparent enough to share that with us. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely. Isn't that isn't that the truth for our kids too, right? So just as I am a middle-aged lady who is continuing to peel back the onions and the layers of my life and realize that there's more to my story, there's more things to learn from my story, that with our kids, they may go through and be able to process grief at a certain age, but then they hit another milestone and we have yet another set of grief because they understand the world differently. And so I can only grieve, you know, to a certain point, and then I have to hit another milestone and unpack that. And I think that's just part of the human experience. But as I've realized that I'm not going to be able to, we talk about this all the time with TBRI, and Karen Purvis is the original quoter, and I'm going to say it wrong, but that we can't lead a child to a place that we haven't been.
Yeah.
But that if I don't work through the disappointments, if I don't work through the heartbreak, if I don't leave space for myself to lament, I can't get to true healing. It's just gonna be stuffing it, and then it's gonna come out in other ways. And so it's not gonna help me to be present with my child if I'm preoccupied with the past or worried for the future. So that to me is sort of the best first thing, because it's not, I mean, when I talk about self-care, I literally did a face mask this morning. Okay, so I'm all about the face mask.
Right.
Do not misunderstand me.
Right.
I got up this morning and I put my pumpkin enzyme mask on when I made my smoothie. And like,
right.
But it's also the hard part of doing the work.
Right.
And telling the truth to ourselves, and sitting in that, and being grateful, you know, for those of us who know Jesus, we're grateful that we have someone that travels with us on this journey, that we don't do that alone either, and that that we have someone that laments with us, and that we have a community that can lament with us too. And so I think that that's leaving space for that for ourselves, because then we can do it for our kids. Right.
What I hear you saying is, when you're saying that, what you're talking about is soul care. And I don't know why that just hit me. I've heard other people talk about soul care before, and I'm like, oh, there's the difference, you know, and I love it. You know, we definitely can't bring our kids to a place where we haven't been. And I can see in my own parenting the places where my son, you know, needs to grieve. And it's led me down that path where I've had to grieve a lot of things myself, not just my own history, but things in my son's life that me as a mom that I can't change, like bonding experiences that I will never have. I'll never know his first words, or I'll never see those first walks, or some of those really precious times. I had to actually go back and grieve that I didn't get that, and that other parents get to share those things. So in talking about the soul care and the grieving, how can parents today, you know, how can the people on this call, what does that mean for them right now in this coronavirus thing, and they're staying home with their kids and trying to probably just get through the day? Like, what does that look like? How do you do that in the midst of this?
Yeah. So grace is going to be, it is, Halo Project actually put a Facebook post up today that was so beautiful, and we shared it on the Respite Facebook page, because it says, for those of you who could do the schedule, it's perfectly okay. It's totally okay. And for those of you who need to stay in your PJs all day, it's totally okay. And for those who need to be on screen all day, it's totally okay. And I think that kind of, we need to give ourselves a lot of freedom, because for a mainstream family who's not experienced the effects of trauma in the same way that a family who has a child from a hard place, there's already a grief coming on, this onslaught of grief that we in America do not know how to deal with. We are so pain avoidant for the grief, and we don't have enough built into our culture for the grief and bereavement process anyway. That we're all like, oh, we're exhausted, or we're this. It's grief. What we are feeling is grief because our way of life as we know it has changed. We are missing significant milestones, and we'll continue to miss significant milestones. I think that if we are looking with eyes that are open, we're seeing some pretty significant disparities in our culture. We're seeing racism in our culture, and these are all grievable things. So there's this part here that everyone's experiencing, and then that's going to trigger the grief and loss that's not processed in our homes. So it kind of doubles down on it in some respects, and so it feels even heavier. So I think that grace in understanding, we don't need to look like anyone else's Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram family. Now more than ever, right. We don't need to do that. That comparison is going to steal any joy that we could have in the healing process. And I know that and all of you who are parents of kids from hard places know that that's true. That you see these pictures of people, the Easter pictures and the Christmas pictures and the Thanksgiving pictures and Mother's Day, and you're like, yeah, that does not happen in our house, and that has to be okay, because our families are going to have a different expression of what is beautiful than that image. And I know that's not sustainable anyway, right? That's just a snapshot in time. Right. It's not sustainable. And what we're going for is something that's more of a long-term, eternal, sustainable effect of what does it look like to walk alongside each other, to bring healing in these spaces where there was a lack of hope before. So how can we point to hope continually, even in the worst of things? So grace, pajamas, ice cream, speed time.
All right, sounds good to me. So what also for everyone who's in the chat, Max has put up the Halo Project and Renae's website, so you can look at the things she's talking about later. Go ahead and link to those. But Renae, so what's that look like for our kids? Like, how do we help our kids grieve this time? So that, like, what I like what you're saying, you know, you have to kind of just do whatever it takes right now, that throw out all your expectations or even your own, you know, rules maybe you had before for electronic time or homework time. And I hear you saying, like, kind of let go of that, do whatever it is that you need to do for your family to get through these days. But how do we, as the days start adding up, how do we help our kids recognize that they too have that grief, and help them with that, so that we can help move them along and kind of move past the clinching and the survival mode, and try to move, like what you're saying, just on to another place and move out of that.
Yeah, I think that what is beautiful about this forced family time is that we do have an opportunity here once we have been able to find some rhythm, and we will all get there. I think a lot of people I've talked to, this is the week it started to happen. Like last week was everything's heavy. It's heavy on my chest. It's hard to breathe. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have clear answers. Schools canceled. Is it 1 week? Is it 2 weeks? Oh wait, it's 7 weeks. Like we had a lot of that going on. And then this week people are like, okay, I'm starting to get a little bit of a rhythm. So whenever your people get to that space, this is the time to work on those connection rituals to provide as much felt safety as you can. And the more felt safety that we're able to create in connection in this space, we'll have opportunities for things to come up organically, because you'll hear a kid sigh, or you'll sigh, and you'll say, what are you sighing about? And you're like, you know, I'm sad because I realized we're gonna miss this. I'm sad because I had plans for Easter and this is gonna soon be said. And we just create space for that because we're attuned in these other things we're doing. So whether that is, I was recommending the I Love You Rituals book to people today. If that is not something that you already have, if you're not doing nurture groups, so you don't have that connection time, depending on the age of your kids, game time is a great time for that type of thing. Weather report is a great way if you're doing the, you know, the touches on the back and having the light connection, and you can do that with lots of different age groups. And you can, you know, based on if the kid's okay with touch. But
what's
working,
the I Love You book ritual, or I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so there's a book, and it's I'm not going to remember the author's full name. Her first name is Becky. It's a big yellow book, and it's
Okay.
I Love You Rituals.
And they're
literally meant to be things that you can do that are showing connection. So it's building in attunement, it's bringing in ritual. Like, so we know the difference between something that's a routine and something that's a ritual, is that ritual is that routine wrapped in connection. It's meant to bring us closer together and remind us that we are more than just ourselves, we are connected. And so this is a great time for rituals. Like, you can make up the flexibility song that you have to sing every time something changes. You can figure out how do we find our rhythm together, and ritualize this time and say, okay, for this time. And then when we are past this, you can always throw back to that time and say, you remember when we did this, when we, you know, decided that we were all going to put on the matching pajamas and take a walk in the neighborhood, drinking our Christmas pajamas in March, drinking hot chocolate, walking around the neighborhood, you know, like whatever the thing is. But, you know, this is my tribe of people, and we're doing the thing together, and we're connected.
I love that. We were in support group today, and we watched a Karen Purvis video about the Shabbat, and she was talking about rhythms and rituals, and we were just talking about that today. So that's why I bring it up, because I'm hearing it for now a second time. So maybe other people could benefit from hearing it. But setting up those things like you were saying, like remembering the times when we all got in PJs. So making kind of a big deal out of a fun moment. So then we have that in the future to look back on and say, remember we got through this hard time together. Like, we're doing something, we're all going to join in this virtual painting of rocks tomorrow. So our family of 4 is all going to paint these rocks and have them set out so that we can even look back on the time. Like, remember when we went through that hard time with the coronavirus and we all painted those rocks together? We were stuck in the house together for weeks on end. So I love that it's a simple thing that we can all do today. So I love that you even bring that up, and I just wanted to share that too, add on to that. So carry on.
Another thing that occurred to me is that as we are missing milestones, that finding a way that we can celebrate them differently as a family. And so last year for 8th grade, my youngest, unfortunately, was she wasn't expelled, but she was not invited to come back to school after it was a terrible incident that wasn't actually her fault, but she and other students were asked not to come back to school, and so she didn't get to graduate from 8th grade. So they said, well, it's pending investigation, but it won't be finished with investigation before the end of 8th grade. So she missed out on all of the stuff. So the graduation, the parties, and all those things. And so I was a little heartbroken for her. Not that, I mean, I didn't have an 8th grade graduation. It's not a thing for me. But for my kid from a hard place, it's a big deal. So by golly, we were going to do it. And, and so I had mentioned this at work, and my supervisor said, well, we could just have it at work. We could throw a graduation, and we did. And so we got a cap and gown for her, and we had a lunch, and all these people were here to celebrate her, and everyone reflected these beautiful things to her. And so she came up to that and sat next to me at the lunch. She goes, "Mom, this is better than whatever would have been at school." And I think that we can reclaim and recapture some of this, and we'll have to be very creative in the ways that we do it. But it's also kind of a beautiful time for us to champion each other in that creativity, and pass on with each other and say, "Hey, I tried this and it went really well," or "Don't do this, it went really poorly."
Right.
But to try out these different things so that we can mark the time, and that family is at the center of it. I think that I think that the parents' voice has been lost a lot in culture. I think that there's a lot of voices that are competing for the attention of our kiddos. And so if we're able to be mindful and connected to our kids, this is actually a great time where there's not going to be as much competing, and we'll be able to draw them closer.
Yeah, I love that. I know we're all going to be needing to think of innovative, creative, inspiring ways to do spring break with our kids, Easter with our kids, if we're used to doing it one way, which is not staying at home alone. So and even my son's graduating from high school, so that could be canceled, and we may be doing what you said, trying to figure out a new way to do some of those things. Yeah, so in a little bit, in just a few minutes, we're going to open it up for questions, if people have questions. But is there anything else that you'd like to just talk about right now before we give people a few minutes to kind of form some questions in their mind?
Sure. I would say that one thing that we are doing that I think for parents has been really helpful. So I've been teaching the Making Sense of Your Worth class. And it's been, unfortunately, we've had to stop it. That one is it's got a lot of clinical pieces, and you really do need people in the room because there's a ton of tangibles. But as we were starting to work through it, it was really beautiful to watch people start to make peace with some of the stuff in their past, and start to look at what relationships needed to change. And so a different version of that, it's a little bit lighter because it doesn't have the clinical pieces, but it is very, very, very much in depth and beautiful. And I know you've gone through this, Tristan, too, with your group, is the Anchored Bible Study. And so if you're coming from a faith tradition, it is some of the best work that I've seen that really does systematically help you to, in a very safe way, start to address things from your past that are getting in the way of you connecting with your kid now. It's just really good material.
Yeah, we've enjoyed, we haven't finished it in our group, but we have enjoyed what we have done, and it gets pretty deep. And I did see that you are going to be doing an online one starting April 1st. So we'll put the information for that. Max already did in the chat, and we're going to follow up with everybody with information on that. But how's the online going? Because I know you also started one today, right?
Yeah, so we'll have one starting tonight, and we had one that was meeting, one of the Bible studies that was meeting on Fridays, which we've moved to online. And I have to say, it has not changed the level of depth people are willing to go. It's maybe even a little safer in some ways because of the distance. And so one of the wins, I think, for us is that last Friday, one of our participants who's just recently coming out of a DV situation, a domestic violence situation, So she's been traveling with us on this, and she was able to share really, really hard parts of her history from childhood on through last week. And she stopped and she said, you know, I've spent so much money on therapy, and I've spent so much time doing all of these things, and nothing has gotten me to the place where I've been able to tell the truth about this until now.
Wow.
And to me, I'm like, that if we can give any freedom by sitting and making space for people in that, I mean,
yeah,
it's just amazing. And then
it's powerful.
Then what we can do with that, right?
Right.
Once we are free, then we are free to connect. We can enter deeper into relationship without fear, because we know who we are. We know what our worth is,
Right.
and that's, to me, beautiful.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't know, maybe it's kind of bold, and I hope it's not too out of line, but I would say, like, all of us, if we haven't done something like that and we're raising kids with trauma histories and we're really struggling, that it's only going to help us in our parenting, because there's these layers of onions that we don't even always know that we have until we give ourselves that space and time and quietness to really examine that. And if we're not in a safe place with safe people, it doesn't always come up. We just don't. We'd rather go, I don't know, organize the kitchen, or I don't know, you know. So I would recommend to everybody on this call, if just to look into joining one of those. Either to when's tonight's start?
Tonight starts at 8:30.
And Wednesday, April 1st at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, we'll put those links up there.
Great.
So we can open it up for questions if anybody, or just comments, or, you know, just a time of sharing.
Video.
We're going to go ahead and unmute it, Max, or we're going to. All right. So do you want to ask people to raise hands, or you want to keep it unmuted?
Just go ahead and ask a question, and if you have background noise, we love that, but you can go ahead and mute yourself back up.
So everybody's unmuted. If you want to go ahead and mute yourself, because there's a lot going on, go ahead and mute yourself. If you want to just have a conversation and join in with us, go for it.
I did it right away.
There's the book, I Love You Rituals by Becky Bailey. Thanks for putting that up there, Max.
I don't know if am I on?
Yes,
Yep.
you are.
Okay. I wrote a question already, but I'll just say it again. Hi, Renae. I love your idea about the whole ritual thing, creating rituals, and I am the least creative person out there, I think, in this world, it feels like. So I don't know if you guys have any ideas of rituals you've done. I love the rock idea. I'm going to try to do that if I can find some rocks. But I don't know, anybody else have any other ideas, things I can try that would bring that connection? Because I'm a very I get it done, task-oriented person. So we've been doing school because that works for me. I'm a teacher, and that's just in me. But the creativity side of me is lacking. So I would love to hear some ideas from people.
Yeah, one that if it doesn't require creativity, it requires paying attention. So it may hit right where you're at on, because I know that you are, everyone I know, Rachel. So I know that you pay attention to your kids. You know what's going on with them.
Because the 10-year-old
And
is
so
stuck in the
one
fight or
thing
flight stage.
that you might do is
Triggered so fast.
Getting some feedback
That he
from
took
someone.
his anger more out on the mom versus the dad, and they wanted to know.
Is someone sharing right now? Could we maybe mute your mic?
Here, I'm going to mute everyone.
Actually, Matt.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
So there we go. So Rachel, one thing that might be a neat ritual, and I know this could be different for each kid based on their age group, is to have 2 notebooks that you have in the house. And you can choose whether that you let them read them or you read them to them at the end of each day. But the goal is that as you see great things about just their personhood, not necessarily what they've done, it can be what they've done, but you try to write down at least 3 things each day that are affirming of them. And then that becomes part of the good night. So even if there's been things that have been upsets during the day, or you know, there's been disconnect, or there's been, and you've needed to do repair and all of that, when you get to the end, you're like, yeah, that was a tough day. You know what else I know? These are the truths that I know about you. Mm-hmm. So they'll be, because there's all these messages of lies that they get, you know, all media, all kinds of other places, from their histories, for all this stuff. And instead you get to say, you know, the last things that they hear before bedtime are the truth about who they really are. And that doesn't require creativity. It just requires paying attention, which you're good at, and then letting them know. And that can become a ritual.
That is a good one.
And I had another one is doing a collage. You know, you could clip out their favorite thing from a magazine, or not that there's a lot of magazines anymore, screen grabs on the computer, whatever. But, you know, that way it doesn't require much creativity, but they can, you know, clip out, you know, bands, music that they like. Tristan was also wanting me to share something that we're going to be doing tomorrow on another Zoom call. It's painting kindness rocks. And I'll put this also in the show notes, but it'll be a call like this. It's actually with a really good friend of mine that I used to paint surfboards with. And, you know, it could be fun for your kids to do as well, just painting some rocks.
Yeah, and that's a free event. Something fun. So I will go ahead. If you guys have other ideas rituals that you do in your family, you can go ahead and type them in the chats too. I'm going to go ahead and read the next question someone typed in. I have 2 sons, ages 8 and 10, both adopted from South Korea. We went through 10 years of infertility. I have not let myself feel the grief fully for all my loss. My 10-year-old is stuck in the fight-flight stage a lot of the time. His anger is triggered so fast, he takes it out on me more than Daddy. Do you have any advice on how to help him feel his grief?
I'll just come from my own experience on this and say that you are right in identifying that you need to go through your process in order to help him. See, that was already wrapped in your question, and you're exactly right. So that's going to be, he's not going to be able to process until you are able to be present with him in that. And part of his anger is pulling you into his anger as well. So the mess that he feels inside, all that messiness, he's like, I can't travel in this alone. And he might even be identifying that you've got some of that going on too, as you're processing and working through this. And so that is a pull to say, journey with me on this. Let us be a mess together, which is beautiful, but also very chaotic and can sometimes feel very dangerous. But I think that he's going to be really, without even knowing it or not, it's not going to be a cognitive thought, but his person knows that you need to work on it so that he can work on it. I think that in the meantime, using a lot of those words that are the mirroring words that are listening. Dan Siegel is particularly good about writing examples about this, of saying, I see that this is how you're feeling. yeah, that feels awful. And creating space for the expression of that anger, but in a healthy way. Anger is actually not a problem. It's what we do with the anger that becomes a problem.
Yeah, thanks, Renae. And Becky, my heart goes out to you. I understand what that is like, and I know several other people on this phone call do too. When it's so hard when you seem like you're getting the brunt of that anger and stuff. But I really do encourage you to work through your own grief. And I'm not sure how it works, but it does, because I've done my own grief work, and through doing it, I recognized that I could take him further down his road in dealing with his grief that I couldn't before, and I couldn't really see that until I actually dove into my own work, and then I was able to see that. So I just encourage you in that. Maybe join the Anchored Bible Study that Renae's going to be hosting. Yeah, I'm just sorry. I know that's hard. So we have another question from Veronica. What is the flexibility song?
Oh.
Ready to sing for us?
So it's every family has to make up their own.
Oh, what's yours?
We are so used to flexibility. For those who don't know, my eldest daughter is how do I describe her? She's just been through the ringer her whole life, and is not able to be in mainstream population without hurting herself and others. So we've learned to be just really flexible. We used to have a code word that was our it was called Eagle's Nest, and Eagle's Nest meant like, everybody go to your safe place because it's about to get real in here.
Oh, wow.
I talk about this with my teachers when we post schedules, and then we need to change something. We just come up with, as a group, what is the song of change or the song of flexibility. So it's a celebration instead of, oh no, now we have to worry, but it just becomes a part of, and that helps us do the playful engagement part of change, where it's not as hard, because we're all acknowledging it's not fun and we don't like it, but we have a plan. You're also tickling their hippocampus, because you're giving them part of that manual that says, when things change, we actually are okay. So you're just like writing a music book for the library of their hippocampus when you ritualize change.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like helping them with that transition. Yeah. Let's see, another one. Elizabeth says, I need to stay on schedule. It keeps me grounded. And right now my hardest kid is fighting against it. How do I find a compromise without losing my sanity? It's a good question.
Pass. Just kidding.
Yeah, right?
Tristan, you had mentioned something too about, we recognize that times that we have been really rigid on things and have had to learn when do we need to let go, and when do we need to say it needs to be this way. And so I think that, it's interesting. Do you know why she's fighting against the schedule?
I don't know. Should we unmute Elizabeth?
Elizabeth?
Max, do you want to unmute her? Well, let's find Elizabeth.
Let's see. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can ask Renae, and Renae, you can respond.
Why? I don't know why. Control has been a big issue for us, and so she feels like I'm trying to control her too much. But when she goes to school, she has to follow a schedule, and she doesn't fight the teacher. So we printed that schedule that was shared, and it's, kind of helping everyone else stay on track and not just sit and wallow. But for her, it feels like I'm controlling her. So I suggested, you come up with a schedule and, let me know what you want to do. And, she hasn't done it. Or she says, I just want to be on the iPad all day.
She just wants to be on what all day?
The iPad?
Okay.
Oh, electronics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what would happen if she was on the iPad all day?
She has 2 main projects that she was given online. And so that means she'll, wait till the day before to submit it and be up all night. And, that's always fun.
Yeah. And you can remind me how old she is, please?
12.
She's 12. Yeah. So, and I think this is every parent. We all get to this question, right? About how much do we push for what's going on academically if they are not in that space of receiving it well, and what's more important, is it the connection or academics, and why can't we have both, for goodness sake? And so I think that yeah, of course, I'll just tell you what I've done, right? So every family's different. You've met my youngest. I don't check her homework. I don't see if it's turned in anymore. It was crazy making for me. And when she fights the schedule, it 100% is a control thing. 100%. It is definitely where if she feels like something else is out of control for her, she will find anything else that she can try to control. And so certainly right now, with everything that's going on, and it is very much, she wants to control every little thing. So I'm trying to let her. I like last night, I was like, what do you want to watch for TV? And she was like, I want to watch Hamilton. And I was like, can we pick something else? Because I do not have 2.5 hours to Hamilton. But we were able to find a compromise. But I know that when we're in normal time, which is not now, I can always tell when she's had a trouble with another teacher at school, because she comes home and is very controlling, like very controlling, because it actually has nothing to do with us. It has to do with their state of felt safety. So for whatever reason, because like we're the same way too. Like if we feel good, we're very okay with healthy leaders leading us, right? And I know you, everybody. I know Elizabeth too. And I know you, and I know that you provide a lot of space and choice for your kids, and you are a healthy leader for her. And so there's something else going on. I would let for crazy making during the season, I would let go of as much of it as you can. And she, it's 6th grade or 7th grade?
6th grade.
Yeah, you could let her fail forward a little. It's 6th grade.
Okay.
It is. It's and if anybody wants to come at you for saying that you're not a good mom for that, you send them to me.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I just love that you say that. That. And when you were sharing that, I was just thinking about even myself, our kids, maybe she does need to be on her electronics for not now, from now on going forward all the time, but just for a season, to be able to that's her way of transitioning through this hard time. Like, I think sometimes I need to isolate. I need to go within myself and just go do my thing, whatever that might be. And until I can kind of come to a place where then I can come back. And like you said, I can be led by leaders or just do whatever it is I have to do. So maybe there is, space for our kids to have a little more freedom than we've given them before to do some of those things that they are feeling a need to do, I think about Karen Purvis talking about our kids, you know, say they need something and we're like, that, you don't need that. And then we're like, well, what about when we feel like we need like a Diet Coke or something, and we'll do whatever it is to go get that Diet Coke or whatever it is that we need. And there's those times, like there's times where I just feel like I need a cup of coffee when I was working, and I just, you know, and our kids are that same way. Like we may not perceive their need as a true need, but for them, maybe it is.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We have, Max wanted me to share that there is also for people your 8-hour TBRI training that's coming up this Friday and is free for parents. So, and is that covering all of the TBRI, or were you sharing with me that's just connecting, or is that the whole thing?
It's the intro and overview, so you'll get an overview of the whole thing. So it is here's the brain science, and then we're going to go through empowering, connecting, and correcting.
Great. So if anybody wants a refresher, or they're not even sure what TBRI is, it's trust-based relational intervention. It is what I live and breathe in my house. It's how I get through my life. And Max has put a link in there. There's a free course that Renae is teaching this Friday, 8 hours. You can tune in, you can put your headphones on, you can cook lunch while listening, you can do your cleaning while listening, play games.
And we will be providing a fillable PDF of the workbook. So if you're like, I don't want to print that 31-page workbook, we got permission to create that fillable so that you can just use your Adobe Reader and keep your notes if you find something in there that you really want to do. There will be quite a bit of breakout session, community participation. I just took a group through one of the trainings on this last Saturday for 8 hours, and we had 16 people who at the end of it said, wow, we are remarkably connected, and we've learned so much in this sharing time that people really appreciate it, especially during this time when we can't see each other as much. It's a great place for connection.
Great. So Renae, I have 3 questions for you that I'm going to ask you. There can be deep questions, but I'm hoping you can just, you know, pop off the top of your head, and we won't hold you to the answer, but we're going to wrap it up with these 3 questions. So first of all, what brings you joy?
Coffee, hugs for my kids, and other things that I can't remember. Really good risotto.
Awesome. All right. And if you could say one thing to your younger self when you first started this adoption journey, what would it be?
It really is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I hold on to. That it's going to feel like you're dying sometimes, but you are not going to die.
Yeah. And look at you now.
There we go.
Who would have thunk?
Not me.
All right. And my last one is, what foster adoption myth would you like to just blow up right now? Have you heard and you're like, it just gets under your skin?
You know, you know, if I can just love them, followed by if they would just. So there is no one thing that is, this is why I've learned all of the different interventions, because there is no actually one thing that covers everything. And so we can't, it's not going to be just love. It's not going to be just nurture. It's not going to be just structure. It is really going to take so much more and so many more people than just you. And so being open to that you don't have to be the expert in everything, that you don't have to carry the burden alone. It's really important that you have a support group. If you don't have one now, we will find one for you. Like,
Yes,
it's
yes.
really, really important to have a support group, because you're going to need space to come and say the things that you would never want to utter in the regular public, because they wouldn't understand when you say, I wish I had never done this. Because if we're all honest, there's a point when we would say, this is so hard, I wish I'd never done this. And then you take a breath and say, but I'm so glad I did, right?
Yes.
So we have to have those spaces to say, this was so hard. This is so hard. And I'm so honored to have that opportunity to do this thing that's so hard at the same time.
Yes, yes, definitely. I've been there. Well, Renae, it has been just a joy having you. You're just such a wonderful spirit, and you have so many great insights. And I just wanted to recap a few of the things that we were highlighting was your that I want people to know about resources that you're doing upcoming. The Anchored Bible Study that's coming up next Wednesday at 10 a.m. And then the TBRI class that is this Friday. And what time does that start?
That starts at 9.
Perfect. Okay. And there's actually in the chat, there's a free code if you go. So if you click on her link and you sign up for that, the code for that is In the Trenches 2020. And that'll get your class, make it free for you, for parents.
So, and that's a pre-conference as part of our respite conference. So it'll be surprised by the other things that are on there. So we're doing a 2-day conference. The first day is really to pour into the families. The second day is geared a little more toward the community that's surrounding you. Feel free to, of course, you can attend both. We're not going to tell you no, but that day is for you. It's like literally for you. That's why it's free.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. And feel free then they can point their teachers or other people to the other conference, maybe family members.
Yes.
All right. Well, great. And then Max is going to go ahead and link your website where you guys will be able to find a whole host of other things she is doing and putting on. She has a happy hour chat. I can't even remember all the other stuff, Renae. I don't know. Do you want to list a few of those other things real quick? Just rattle them off and we'll look up the details online.
Sure. We're doing a 9 p.m. happy hour, a virtual happy hour on Zoom that you can sign up for. We do have a support group on the second and fourth Sunday of each month from 2 to 3:30. We don't have to worry about childcare right now because we can do it virtually. But so we've got those that are coming up. We will be doing some wellness circles coming up. Those are 6-week classes where we really just focus on what part of heart, mind, body, or soul do you need watered, and you get to walk with people during that time. And then lastly, we have 2 things, 4-week classes that will be coming up. One is emotional wellness, and the other one is spiritual practices. So those will be great walking alongside each other times as well.
Great, great. Well, thank you for joining our conversation tonight. Really appreciate it. Everybody, join us next week, same time, same place. We will be having Pam Parrish. She has on the YouVersion Bible app, there is a Bible plan called Battle Weary Parents, and she is also an author and speaker, and she will be here next week. So thank you all for joining us. Thanks again, Renae, and have a great week.